Okay, very good. Okay. Hi, welcome to the Green Liberty International Convention. Our convention today rises to the level of international event on account. We have speakers and guests from Canada and Australia. And as I mentioned earlier, Emmanuel works out of Japan. The purpose of our convention today is to consider the mission of Green Liberty and the possibilities for a liberation coalition and how we can build a movement. To be clear, Green Liberty's fundamental mission is to advance liberation from the plutocratic power structure by supporting and advancing a coalition and a movement. The reason a liberation project is necessary is because the ruling elites have failed to be responsible to the country and the world, but more significantly, the plutocracy, through its command of deep state, has committed state crimes against our democracy. Green Liberty is post-conspiracy theory, and that there is no wondering about what happened, but accept that state crimes are evident, especially in the fact of cover-ups, as we have seen in the case of the JFK and the 1960s assassinations, the 9/11 event, the COVID event, and all the forever wars from Afghanistan to Iraq to Yugoslavia to Libya, Syria, Ukraine, and now Gaza and Lebanon, and more in between. Eisenhower warned the country about the military-industrial complex, and now we today are responsible for responding by calling out the endemic corruption of society by the power elite that are advancing what David Hughes is calling omnivore by technocracy against the people. Green Liberty is a demand for accountability, transparency in government and corporate affairs, and protection for whistleblowers as fundamental to fighting corruption and instilling integrity in government. This pragmatic stance recognizes that we are being lied to, and that by calling out the big lies, we can resist and conceivably build a political truth movement that can inform the mass mobilization we need to get rid of the plutocracy. One way we can build a movement is by staging a block of political truthers to run against the state crimes while advancing an egalitarian revolution as the antidote to the emerging techno-totalitarianism. The prospect for a 2026 electoral bloc that uses the bully pulpit to speak truth to power is a topic I would like to discuss later in this convention. Finally, here in Oregon, Green Liberty is endeavoring to advance an Oregon Medical Freedom Coalition to protest the COVID mRNA technology. By advancing a protest project, Green Libertarians can grow our movement around an issue that has a strong following. So now, I pass the microphone to Emmanuel. He will speak. I'm going to let each of the other speakers make your own kind of introductions about yourself, your background, kind of why you're here at this Green Liberty Convention, and then please share your remarks. The order of events I'm suggesting, we'll have Emmanuel, Jeremy, John Spritzler, Anthony Hall, are from Canada, Gloria from Florida, and we will have guest remarks from Adam Baker in Australia. And closing our list of speakers will be Davi on the Human First Project. So now I turn to Emmanuel, please. Emmanuel, we'll put the spotlight on you. Thank you very much all for coming to our convention today. Chuck out.
Thank you, Chuck. My name is Emmanuel Pastreich, and I work with Chuck and others on Green Liberty from early on, and also ran as independent and then in the Green Party for president under the Fear No Evil banner. And I'm honored to have the chance to address everyone today. I want to say, do not be concerned if the convention of Green Liberty is not crawling with Hollywood stars, is not animated by the phosphorescent personas of Oprah and Stevie Wonder, as was the Democratic Convention. Be thankful. We are not crawling with Israeli operatives or managed by IT hotshot CEOs. Do not regret that we do not have the layers of oil and coal billionaires or hedge fund cowboys like the Republican convention. We are not stoking up racial conflicts for fun and profit or blaming immigrants for the devastation wrought by multinational corporations. Nor are we sad that the so-called independent and third-party candidates who cannot bring themselves to whisper a word about state crimes that have reduced our nation to ruins could not find time in their busy schedules to join us today. You see, what the United States of America needs today is not money, which corrupts absolutely, is not celebrity status, which separates the haves from the have-nots radically, not buzz and sparkle, which drags us into a narcissistic cocoon of consumption. No, what America needs is truth, and just the truth, so that we may be set free, that our souls may be liberated from the oppression of deception and manipulation, so that we can assess where we really are in history, who we really are as individuals and families, and then raising ourselves again up out of the mud, shaking off the dust, slowly, systematically, we can get back on track to realize our full potential and the potential of a nation, of the people, for the people, and by the people. No, it's a great honor to be with a small group of dedicated and brave citizens like yourselves, citizens who grasp that the purpose of politics is not power or money, not glory or fame, but rather the pursuit of truth and the establishment of transparent, accountable, and ethical governance. And those two goals form a sacred pair. No, we do not want a single person more with us today. We want only those who will form a vanguard, who will be the trailblazers, who will declare that we have had enough of falsehoods and limited hangouts, enough of praising famous men and military heroes, enough of war criminals like Netanyahu being appointed as president for the day and then drowned in standing ovations by our pathetic Congress. Democracy is important, but it is also an overused term and not a simple magic trick that our worn out politicians want us to believe it is. When the Declaration of Independence states, we hold these truths to be self-evident, it asserts that truth in a scientific sense and in an ethical sense must be the foundation of any government, of any system for governance. And we do not vote on truth. Truth is not determined by Facebook likes, by TikTok followers, or by appearances on popular talk shows. Truth is inherently undemocratic, and like the needle of the compass that always points north, it must always be so. Building a democracy on a foundation of falsehoods is a recipe for the most unforgiving tyranny. It always has been, and it always will. We are better off searching for truth, for justice, for citizens who will fight for equality than we are taking dark money to win primaries, bowing before false idols to be included in popularity polls, or keeping quiet so that we can appear on CNN or Democracy Now. Today, October 6th, is no ordinary day. Tomorrow, October 7th, the first anniversary of the hybrid false flag attacks on Israel that were used to justify the genocide in Gaza, the Guernica of our age, to seize the land and energy of Palestine and Lebanon, to push for attacks on Iran, and to start World War. We also know that tomorrow could well be the date
to the guys
for
earlier, and it seemed like they did
catastrophic-
private for only people who put their email. It's not complicated. You don't need a password, but you got to put your name in an email. Then
We also know that tomorrow could well be the date of a catastrophic Israeli attack on Iran, perhaps including oil fields, nuclear plants, urban centers, military installations, and just about anything else that would create a crisis so enormous that the others would be dragged in. Russia, Turkey, and China may well be sucked in to defend Iran in spite of the horrific risks and the United States and its G7 club of overfed puppies will probably be stuck to the Israeli tar baby to the bitter, bitter end. Green Liberty is the only political action committee registered with the federal government that is capable of taking on this out of control monster at this moment. And we will use our full capacity, our ability as citizens who are dedicated to justice and equality, to resist this drive for world war abroad and for plutocracy and tyranny at home. As Robert Kennedy said famously in 1966, before he was cut down and kept from realizing the dream, quote, each time a man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. The ripples that we send out today may seem small, but they are not. The ethical import, the historical significance of our words and actions at this moment, a moment when we face the rot of institutions and practices all around us, the indolent indifference of those who can make a difference, and we stare into the dark maw of world war that raises up its ugly head just across the sea, is not small in any sense. No, this is a wonderful moment for us, for our nation. Not wonderful in the sense that the battle is over, for verily the battle is only beginning. Not wonderful in the sense that we can walk on marble floors and eat lobster with silver knives and forks, for we are starting out with nothing beyond our own humble integrity. No, this moment is wonderful because we are clear as to our goal, we are confident as to our direction, we are united in our will and our commitment, and we are tenacious in our drive for justice and equality for all, without exception, without privilege, without any form of nobility or royalty. We welcome everyone out there who hears our words to join us, to help us transform the very muscles and bones that hold our nation together, and to make America great for the very first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Let me add a spotlight to myself and say that you I met you through the what was the Chustodovsky Global Research. Found your articles, found your fresh, open, frank, willingness to talk about state crimes, big lies, deep state, and it felt natural that you would be a Green Liberty guy with this kind of sensibility of speaking truth to power and advancing a political truth project. So thank you very much, Emmanuel. We are going to shift over to Jeremy, a powerhouse of journalism, professor of history, and activist. And let's get the spotlight on Jeremy. If Tom was helpful, he would do that. And Jeremy, we're asking now for you to share reflections on being here today at our Green Liberty Convention. And we're looking forward to hearing your remarks. And I'm really grateful that you're here to support this project. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I prepared a talk, maybe about 10 minutes, called The Bankruptcy of the Two-Party System in the United States Today and Need for a New Truth, Politics, and Party. Former CIA Director Leon Panetta was among the featured speakers on the final day of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago on August 22nd, when Kamala Harris accepted the party's nomination as its presidential candidate. In his remarks, Panetta re-invoked the supposed glory days of the Obama administration when he gave the orders to U.S. Special Forces to assassinate Osama bin Laden, the alleged mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks. Panetta said that Harris would fit the bill as a tough commander-in-chief to defend the USA against tyrants and terrorists. According to Panetta, Harris knows a tyrant when she sees one and will stand up to them, unlike Donald Trump, whom Panetta suggested had coddled dictators such as Vladimir Putin and told them they can do whatever they want. Panetta said that Trump is intent on bringing back a new era of isolationism in U.S. foreign policy, which the U.S. foolishly and dangerously adopted in the 1930s. Quoting from Ronald Reagan, Panetta emphasized that isolationism never was, never will be an acceptable response to tyrannical government. Panetta ended his speech by highlighting that Harris was a good choice to reinvigorate American world leadership, as she had served on the Senate Intelligence Committee, worked with 150 foreign leaders as vice president, and worked closely with President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine to fight back against Russia and protect Ukraine's democracy. Panetta's speech was filled with falsehoods. Ukraine, for example, is not a democracy, as Zelensky has banned 12 opposition parties, canceled elections, outlawed the Russian Orthodox Church, and assassinated political rivals extending into Russia. Trump never also allowed Putin to do whatever he wanted. Rather, Trump, who is not an isolationist, adopted a hardline anti-Russia policy, pulling out of the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty while ratcheting up sanctions on Russia and arms supplies to Ukraine during his presidency. Additionally, the U.S. never adopted isolationism in the 1930s. The country became a global empire in the late 19th century with its colonization of Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines, and FDR embarked on a major naval buildup in the Asia Pacific in the 30s that provoked the Pacific War. Panetta's speech, I think, epitomizes why we're here. It shows the other moral bankruptcy of that party that's attacking Donald Trump, an arch militarist from the right, and from an even more neoconservative and hawkish position than he is. It also epitomized the Democratic Party's symbiotic relationship with U.S. intelligence agencies, which once upon a time were distrusted by liberals. In the 1970s era of the Phoenix program, for example. Many on this call remember Frank Church, a Democrat who set up a special committee to expose CIA abuses and the FBI's COINTELPRO, and Leo Ryan, a California Democrat who sponsored an amendment requiring congressional approval of all CIA activities. These guys obviously would have no place in today's Democratic Party, and these are honorable people who've served in the U.S. Congress. They would have been treated today like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was treated. Their crusading spirit in taking on the CIA, an organized crime entity that illegally interferes in the politics of countries around the world and interferes in our own politics illegally, like in the Russiagate hoax. This crusading spirit has vanished, and there was no one to take it up except us, certainly not in the Democratic Party. It's up to us. Bernie, AOC, or the squad are frauds. They may be progressive on a few issues, but they support NATO, the war in Ukraine. They've done nothing to challenge the CIA. And really, their purpose is to channel potentially radical youth into the corporatist Democratic Party, the death knell of all social movements. Panetta's presence at the DNC again showed this party's evolution into one of leading arch imperialists and war hawks in the 21st century. Neoconservative Bill Kristol, the Iraq War's chief intellectual cheerleader. This is one of the great crimes of the 21st century. He has endorsed Kamala Harris, tweeting, Leon Panetta quoting Ronald Reagan, my kind of Democratic convention. As we see, Dick and Liz Cheney, Darth Vader himself is endorsing Kamala Harris. So something has gone wrong here. The right-wing hawkish themes in Panetta's speech were echoed by Harris in her coronation speech at this DNC convention, which comedian Jimmy Dore described as like a Stepford Wives convention filled with zombie, brain-dead, brainwashed delegates. There was no talk about policy. Nobody cared that there was a rigged primary. Nobody cared that Kamala Harris didn't receive one vote, nor did they seem to care that Harris placed herself on Donald Trump's right, as I pointed out, when she criticized Trump for threatening to abandon NATO, for supposedly encouraging Putin to invade Ukraine, and for allegedly exchanging love letters. These are Harris's words, love letters with dictators such as Kim Jong-un of North Korea. In fact, Trump was engaging in those moments in regular diplomacy with those leaders, which is what U.S. presidents have usually done. But it shows the Democrats are refusing even basic diplomacy. How could we ever have peace if they start mocking somebody who visits a country and tries to engage in regular diplomacy? Harris is reportedly very close to Hillary the Hawk Clinton, the Democratic Party nominee in 2016, a blood-soaked woman whom Leon Panetta enthusiastically endorsed, and criminal who should have been put in jail a long time ago. An arch-imperialist Harris, so those two surely get along very well together. An arch-imperialist Harris champions a bill that will spend billions more money on Orwellian border surveillance technologies that are a cash cow for the military-industrial complex without addressing the root causes of immigration into the United States, like bankrupt free trade deals such as NAFTA that ruin Mexico's agriculture, or U.S. sanctions policy in South America designed to destroy the economies of socialist-leaning countries. Harris was reported in the Washington Post to be unusually close to Filipino ruler Ferdinand Marcos Jr., son of one of the Cold War's worst dictators, who is now following in his dad's footsteps by jailing political opponents and serving as a regional proxy of the United States. In 2022, Harris visited Philippines to shore up a new U.S. military base deal in which the U.S. is expanding its military footprint in the Philippines as it encircles China militarily and threatens a war with it, along with all the other wars it's provoking currently. In her speech, Harris called for sustaining the U.S. military as the most lethal force in the world. Ironically, the week of the convention when she said that, the New Yorker magazine published images from the 2006 Haditha massacre in Iraq, where U.S. Marines slaughtered women and children. Putting two and two together, Harris is basically calling for more Haditha-type massacres, which will inevitably happen when U.S. military intervention is ratcheted up. Harris's choice of Tim Walz as a running mate is very dubious, as Walz lied about his military record to glorify combat, cowardly resigned from the military on the eve of the Iraq War, and then voted in Congress for war appropriations, supported all the wars, Syria, Libya, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, as a congressman and governor. Walz's authoritarianism was evident in his support for harsh lockdown measures as governor of Minnesota, and even for a snitch line in which he urged people to turn in their neighbors who weren't wearing masks or were having gatherings in their home. Additionally, Walz has supported censorship to protect Americans against what he calls misinformation, which we know in this group is a code for investigations and analysis that contradict official U.S. government narratives, whether on COVID-19, Ukraine, or other issues. Harsh assessment of the Harris-Walz ticket in no way suggests that the GOP ticket is any better. The Trump ticket is an incipient fascist one with its scapegoating of immigrants and embrace of white supremacist Christian nationalism. In a December 2020 assessment of Trump's foreign policy, I emphasized Trump's support for gargantuan military budgets like Biden, creation of the U.S. Space Force, which is dangerously militarizing outer space, escalation of the U.S. drone war, support for U.S. regime change operations targeting socialist countries, and escalation of the war in Ukraine and new Cold War with Russia, despite having been attacked as a best friend of Russian leader Vladimir Putin. The Trump administration also escalated U.S. military provocations and economic warfare directed against China and adopted dangerously xenophobic rhetoric that included trying to blame China for the outbreak of COVID-19, which Trump called Kung Flu. J.D. Vance represents an important addition to this odious ticket as a Marine Corps veteran tied in with big tech billionaires who are interlinked with the CIA. Vance's main financial supporter, Peter Thiel, was an early investor in Facebook, the CIA's wet dream, and co-founded Palantir, a data analytics spy company whose main client for years was the CIA, as a huge profiteer off the war in Ukraine and is running intelligence operations there. Vance's ties to Thiel make clear that in spite of his folksy outward persona, cultivated in his best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, Vance will support policies advancing the warfare and surveillance states, just like Waltz, Harris, and Trump. Trump is a candidate of the 1% who, as president, cut corporate taxes and social programs and allowed billionaires like himself to more easily offshore their money. Most pay almost no taxes as it is, and also allow them to pollute the environment at will. Trump called Joe Biden a Trojan horse of socialism, which is ridiculous, considering, among other things, Biden's close ties throughout his career to the DuPont Corporation and MBNA credit card company, which he did many generous favors for in his time in the U.S. Senate. And this reflects the idiocy of U.S. political discourse today. As president, Biden failed to follow through on promises for a $15 minimum wage or to ease student debt, and despite pretenses of being pro-union, supported Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's harsh suppression of a railway workers' strike in Canada. Additionally, Biden raised the military budget to close to $1 trillion and invested in rebuilding dormant U.S. military bases in the Asia-Pacific islands as part of the military encirclement of China, at a time he was supplying copious weapons to Israel to pulverize Gaza and long-range missiles to Ukraine so it could attack inside Russia. Some socialist, that is. Eugene V. Debs, the American Socialist Party leader in the early 1900s, is surely rolling in his grave to hear Biden being called this. It is clear that we need a new political party. From my survey of the absolutely horrendous situation and discourse we have, we clearly need a new political party in the United States today. The existing third parties are dismal failures, and I could spend more time on that, but I won't waste my breath on that. We need a new party that will mobilize people against the warfare and surveillance states and against government corporate tyranny. A party that favors liberty, truth, and social justice and fights for these principles. Historically, third parties have made a difference in U.S. politics when times were bad. For example, in the Gilded Age, in the late 19th century, you had a situation similar today in the sense that the political system was rigged in favor of what people were then calling the 2%, and corruption prevailed. Living conditions for the majority of the population were very bad at this time. Congress refused to pass laws to protect basic workers' rights, and there were no minimum wage or worker compensation laws then in place, or even an income tax. People in that era got together and formed new parties, as we're doing today. And in that time, the successful parties were the People's Party and the Socialist Party that helped advance progressive changes in the 20th century. The People's Party drew on the inspiration of Thomas Jefferson and sought to initiate new laws that could protect small farmers from usurious loans meted out by Wall Street banks, and to help save their farms from foreclosure. They advocated a progressive income tax and government investment in infrastructure and healthcare and public education in rural areas. The socialists advocated for nationalized industry and wealth redistribution along with worker protection. Both parties got people elected into office at the local, state, and even national level. The head of the People's Party, William Jennings Bryan, was even recruited into the Democratic Party and became the party's nominee for president in 1896, and later was appointed as Secretary of State. In that position, he supported a U.S. neutrality policy in World War I. Because of that, he was pushed out in favor of Robert Lansing, John Foster and Allen Dulles' uncle, known as Mr. Wall Street, who supported issuance of a loan by J.P. Morgan to Britain and France that set the groundwork for U.S. entry into World War I that Bryan was trying to block. And that would have saved 100,000 American lives and probably ended the war earlier. It never would have resulted in the rise of Adolf Hitler if William Jennings Bryan had been allowed to enact his policies. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, before the first and second Red Scares destroyed the American left, the People's Party and Socialist Party were successful in disseminating their ideas in newspapers that helped educate people about the corruption of the existing political economic system and failings of capitalism, and helped to advance their vision for social change. The socialists were especially effective in Bible Belt states like Oklahoma because they drew on Christian principles in supporting social justice and forge connection with Christian churches and religious figures in the state. Kate Richards O'Hare was a Kansas farm girl who was a stalwart in the socialist movement in the early 20th century and spent several years in prison for opposing U.S. intervention in World War I. She provided a very positive assessment of the socialist movement in her memoirs, writing that it was well worth the while. The party served a valuable purpose in American life. We took light into dark places. We became the nation's conscious and prodded lawmakers into tardy action on many social problems. We were in the vanguard of all movements for social betterment and decent human relations. We were educators, the voices crying in the wilderness for a quarter of a century, and we left our mark on America. The same, I think, could be true of the Green Liberty PAC, which can and will leave its mark on America. As we grow, we can help educate people about political corruption and manipulation of public opinion by the 1 or 2%. We can shine light on dark places. We will be the nation's conscious and proud lawmakers to enact needed reforms and be at the vanguard of necessary movements for social change in the United States. First and foremost is our commitment to truth. We are unafraid to challenge false government narratives and lying propaganda, whether about COVID, Ukraine, 9/11, or a host of other issues. We will work to educate people and build our movement that demands greater transparency in government, an end to the military-industrial complex and warfare state, and an action of laws that force the wealthy to pay their fair share in taxes. We want to ensure that government money is spent on social economic development and the human needs of the people, and not more weapon systems or subsidies for large corporations and the rich. We champion the restoration of freedom in the country and a climate where political debate is encouraged and cancel culture and the current censorship regime is expunged. Furthermore, we want to set up a truth commission to hold criminal government officials accountable for their massive crimes, including overseeing false flag terrorist operations on American soil, the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, 1993 World Trade Center attack, 9/11 Boston Marathon bombing, that have killed innocent Americans and been used as a pretext to create a police state and wage murderous wars abroad. The U.S. governing elite has sustained its rule by creating a constant set of crises and manufacturing artificial disasters. This is part of a strategy of tension designed to suspend rational judgment among the population and get people to support terrible policies and sign away their liberties. Part of this is to also, their goal is to foment divisions in society. Green Liberty PAC is attuned to the machination of this governing elite, and we want to raise awareness among the population about how they govern, how they manipulate the public, and we want to build a movement in opposition to it. Please join us and spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Powerful. And you are exuding Green Liberty sensibility. We see these crimes and you got to say something. And I think part of what this work means is normalizing talking about what are taboo topics. You're not supposed to talk about this stuff at cocktail parties because you'll ruin the event. But here in our political movement, we're not a cocktail party. We're talking real stuff. So get ready, America. So thank you very much, Jeremy. We're going to remove the spotlight from you. And our next guest I have lined up, I believe, we're going to go to John Spritzler. Now, John, please, I muted you and I hope you can unmute. John, are you available for us to have you share?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we do hear you. Let's get the spotlight beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Tom. And I'm going to remove this from myself. John, you have the floor, as it were. Please share.
Well, thank you, Chuck. So I guess I have to put down my cocktail because you said this is not a cocktail party. So give me a second to.
But you're with comrades, so you get to share.
Yeah. Okay. So, my name is John Spritzler. I live in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm 77 years old. I'm a retired biostatistician, and I'm an advocate of egalitarian revolution. First, I wish to affirm that I am in solidarity with the idea of a liberation coalition, and that I thank Chuck Fall for helping to build it and for inviting me to speak at this Green Liberation National PAC convention today. My talk is about defeating the ruling class's divide and rule strategy. So my key articles for this talk are posted on my website. The red text is a link at the top of it, and I posted the website onto the chat. So it's there if you want to look at it. The egalitarian revolutionary strategy for defeating the ruling plutocracy's divide and rule strategy is to expose it, expose what it is and how it works and the lies and censorship it uses, and then respectfully and persuasively refute the lies and express the key facts and views that it censors. Here is what the ruling class divide and rule strategy is. The ruling plutocracy stays in power by making the have-nots believe that it is impossible to remove it from power, by instilling hopelessness, making people believe that what they would love to do to remove the rich from power is impossible, so it's foolish to even try. How does the plutocracy do this? It censors the fact, yes, it is a fact, that most people would love to remove the rich from power, to have real, not fake democracy with no rich and no poor. This makes people feel all alone in having this egalitarian revolutionary aspiration, and this makes them feel powerless. It paralyzes concrete revolutionary organizing, which only happens when people feel hopeful that it can work. The plutocracy makes have-nots believe that lots of other have-nots
Okay,
are there.
I'm there. Maybe they don't think I am. Hopefully they'll see me.
I think it checks in something.
Oh, wait a minute.
The plutocracy makes have-nots believe that lots of other have-nots are their enemy, that they're evil, bigoted, dangerously stupid, and thus impossible to ally with or to have solidarity with. The plutocracy creates a public discourse of frameworks regarding social issues that censor key facts and views that would be the basis for unity of 80% of the population. Frameworks that give people only two bad sides to take, each side viewing the other as beyond the pale evil or dangerously stupid. Here are some examples. Race. The plutocracy censors the key idea of working class solidarity, which is, among have-nots, an injury to one is an injury to all. It censors that the purpose of the injury to some, be it a particular race or nationality or gender, so forth, it censors that the injury to some is for the purpose of destroying the solidarity of all the have-nots. The non-injured have-nots also are harmed, not benefited by the injury to some. The ruling class tells the non-injured have-nots that the injured ones deserve their injury because they are inferior or evil or criminal, etc., and that the non-injured ones benefit from the injury to others. The injured have-nots then view the non-injured have-nots as their enemy, making the non-injured have-nots fear the injured ones. Presto, divide and rule. So this is why, for hundreds of years, the ruling class has been singling out blacks, non-whites, for the injury of initially chattel slavery based on race, then Jim Crow, then the new Jim Crow, racist prison incarceration, and then affirmative action, which takes a little explanation. Affirmative action is reverse racial discrimination. But only white working class people know this. White middle class and minorities think that affirmative action is just about ending racial discrimination, going to non-white venues to recruit for jobs in school and so forth. Only the white working class finds out from personal experience and media that are aimed at the white working class, like Fox. Only the white working class finds out that whites need higher scores to get hired as a fireman or admitted to a school than non-whites do. White working class people for decades have been getting the message, quote, "We're sorry we couldn't give you the position you applied for. We had to give it to a less qualified minority person." So white workers oppose affirmative action because they oppose racial discrimination. But the middle class is told that white workers are racist who oppose ending racial discrimination. So this is how you get divide and rule. Okay, let's look at the Israel-Palestine issue. The ruling class censors Zionism's anti-working class purpose. It censors Zionism's anti-Jewish working class purpose, which I'll discuss more if I have time later, but it's a fact. And as a result, people think that you have to choose between being on the side of the Jews or being on the side of the Palestinians. That's a false framework, very divisive. Illegal immigration. The ruling class censors the fact that US rulers for decades have been forcing people to illegally immigrate in order to survive by doing horrible things south of the border to make people have to illegally immigrate to survive. It censors that fact. It creates the divisiveness around the illegal immigration. People would be 80% or more united in opposing what the ruling class is doing if they knew that, but they're not told it. Abortion. The ruling class censors the fact that most people think early abortion is not murder, but late abortion, unless it's to save the mother's life, is murder. This basic fact is censored. Same-sex marriage. Its ruling class censors the fact that most people object to anonymous third-party gamete donation conception. In other words, bringing children into the world deliberately in a way that ensures that they will not know their biological mother or biological father. That's what people object to. They don't object to same-sex marriage per se, but the ruling class keeps this a secret. Transgender rights. The ruling class censors the fact that sexual dysphoria, a male thinking he is really female or vice versa, is very rare. And it censors the fact that US rulers are promoting an epidemic of pseudo-sexual dysphoria to turn children against their parents and to physically harm children and divide the have-nots, as well as enrich some big pharma people. So now I'd like to focus on the latest version of racial divide and rule, which is the way critical race theory is being used in K through 12 schools. This is how it's being done. First, the public is inundated with the white privilege lie, the lie that racial discrimination against non-whites benefits whites, the exact opposite of the truth, which is that an injury to one is an injury to all. Then the schools teach the fact of past and current racial discrimination, but not its anti-working class purpose. If a teacher taught its actual anti-working class purpose, they would be fired. The message to white students is, quote, "You, like your ancestors in the past, unjustly benefit from racial discrimination. You are a racist oppressor because you're white. Well, what happens? White working class parents get angry at their children being told they're oppressors because they're white. White working class parents may not fully understand that an injury to one is an injury to all, although many do, but they do know that they are not oppressors. White working class parents do not object to the teaching of the fact of racial discrimination, but only to the teaching of it without also teaching its anti-working class purpose, and hence implying that it benefits white working class people. These white working class parents are accused of being racist by the liberal media. They're accused of being racist just because they're angry at the teaching of the fact of racial discrimination, supposedly. Blacks are made to view the white working class parents as racist. Presto, divide and rule. We need to expose what is going on with these divide and rule schemes. The left doesn't do that. The left just takes the pro-CRT, critical race theory side, and accuses people opposed to it of being racist. And likewise, the left does the same thing for these other issues. It takes one of the sides in the false narrative and opposes the other side without exposing the falseness of the complete framework narrative. Okay, now I'd like to talk about another very divisive issue today, which is the Israel-Palestine issue. The ruling class, by censoring the anti-Jewish working class purpose of Zionist oppression of Palestinians, by doing that, the ruling class falsely frames the conflict as the Jews versus the Palestinians. This forces people to either A, take the side of the Palestinians, and hence be a sitting duck for the false accusation of anti-Semitism, or B, take the side of the Jews and be apologists for Israeli genocide of Palestinians. The intended result is that Americans are extremely divided against each other on this issue today. Friendships are ending. Fights are breaking out. Presto, divide and rule. Here now is the censored truth in detail. And note that the anti-Zionism organizations also censor this truth because they are funded by big money. Here's the truth we never hear about Israel and Palestine. The Israeli government violence against Palestinians is for the purpose of oppressing ordinary Israeli Jews. Israeli violence against Palestinians is designed to make the Palestinians hate Israel and thus be a boogeyman enemy that the billionaire rulers of Israel pretend to protect Israeli Jews from, and thereby control and severely economically oppress and get rich off of the Israeli Jewish working class. The Zionist leaders from the outset have had an anti-Jewish working class goal. During the Holocaust, they betrayed ordinary Jews by opposing efforts to rescue them from the Nazis, because those rescue efforts did not advance the goal of creating the Jewish state they wanted more than saving Jewish lives. Israel, for decades, has funded Hamas and worked to keep it in power, still today, to make the boogeyman enemy maximally frightening. If one wants to be on the side of ordinary Jews instead of billionaire Jews, then one should oppose the Jewish state idea, just as one would oppose the idea of a white state if one is on the side of ordinary and not billionaire white people. And Hamas is also controlled by billionaires, and it oppresses ordinary Palestinians in Gaza. Hamas got votes, not because Palestinians want an Islamic theocracy, but because Hamas was less corrupt than the alternative Palestine Authority and pretended to be fighting Israel militarily. All of these statements about Israel and Palestine that you maybe have never even heard before, I prove in great detail with mainline sources, often Israeli sources, in the articles that I've linked in my website with a red text that you can find at the top of my website, and the website link is in the chat that I posted at the beginning of this Zoom call, pdrboston.org. So in conclusion, when the have-nots know that they are the vast majority in wanting an egalitarian revolution, then they will be able to make it happen despite the 82nd Airborne Division. And my website also discusses why this is true. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Let's get the spotlight. Wow. This is a key piece of building our movement, is generating the criticism and making the case. And I've been listening to you and at meetings, and we've had conversations. So part of our education campaign is in some ways very nuanced around how we what we speak to, in terms of what you suggest is a latent understanding within many, many people that they really do want a fair society. They want egalitarianism. They don't want the plutocracy to be a ruling power structure. But they don't, but part of then our movement is to normalize talking about liberation. What does that look like? What does that mean? Why is it necessary? So you're putting us on that path, John. I appreciate your work very, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's next in line. I think we're going to let's go to Anthony Hall from Canada, and then Gloria will come next, and then I believe it's Davi. And so let's go to Anthony. I'm going to take the spotlight off of John, and let's get it onto Anthony Hall, and I need help with that. And there's Anthony. I find you right here. So welcome from Canada. You can give us a couple of remarks about where you're from and kind of how you got dialed into this Green Liberty Convention, and we look forward to your remarks this evening. Thank you very much, Anthony, from Alberta, Canada. I believe I'm correct on that.
Yes, I can see Montana out that window, Chief Mountain. This is about 30 or 40 miles north of the Alberta-Montana border. It's in the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains. I moved here in 1990. I grew up in Toronto, Canada. I did from nursery school to PhD at the University of Toronto in Toronto, obviously. So I moved up to Sudbury to start teaching in Native Studies, as they called it, with a PhD, or hadn't yet achieved that at that stage. But the idea of education directed largely at Native people, but not only at Native people, I enjoyed this a great deal, and I was invited to come out here to Lethbridge to the Department of Native American Studies. And I came into the business, the discipline, if you could call it that, which is kind of a academic wing of a political movement, Native people. I came in at a time when Canada was moving its constitution from Great Britain and sort of domesticating its constitution. And I guess you could call this the decolonization movement, although nobody at the time in Canada thought of it that way. But I certainly did. And it was a very hot topic. It became a very hot topic in the media, for instance, to consider this process of moving the jurisdiction from the mother country, the British Imperial Core, where the sovereign is, to the former colony and now taking over sort of independence. That was the general idea. But what about the native people, and what about all the promises made to the native people? So that was sort of the métier. I started to, obviously take an interest in the Western Hemisphere, then the world, start to realize this indigenous peoples in encounter with newcomers, with colonial expansion, with economic development, with different military frontiers and all of this. This was a big global theme. I could look at it as a global theme. So I started something called globalization studies. And here I am. This globalization studies took me into a particular interest on 9/11. And I'm going to be talking about books, a 2-volume series called The Bowl with One Spoon. And I rewrote big books. It was a 15-year project. It was published by McGill Queen's University Press. And I actually went through the 2nd volume when I became aware that 9/11 wasn't as it appeared, that it was, a manipulation to demonize, to poison minds against Muslims, terrorists, if you like. And it became a kind of exciting topic to me. And I started to connect it to the Indian Wars and think that the global war on terror was sort of an extension of the Indian Wars, emphasizing the theme of savagery and civilization, which increasingly I could see this continuity. Norman Finkelstein wrote about the Cherokee and Palestinians, this continuity with what was going on in Israel. And of course, the Palestinians seem to encompass this experience of being at the receiving end of colonialism. They faced it in a very compressed time frame, 1948. Of course, it didn't just start there, but in the current round of controversies, 1948 to present takes on this a deep meaning. As this was unfolding, I started to write a lot, starting with the constitutional matters to do with Native people. In like the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star, there was a real hunger for understanding on these themes. And I really started to figure it out when I realized you kind of have to start with writing about the here and now if you want to get into history. And so I've done a lot of that approach where, kind of thinking of Karl Marx coming up with terms like the Industrial Revolution or something. It's a very important process to try to describe what's happening right now and giving names to things that are happening right now. And I've devoted, a good deal of effort to that, and started, with my first 9/11 piece in 2008, submitting it to Michelle Chosadowski at Global Research CA. That's the first thing I published in Global Research. But I started to look at Global Research CA as something of a sort of peer-reviewed activist scholarship. The fact that Michelle Chosadowski, who is a professor, a high-ranking professor, oversaw everything published, it sort of felt like a peer-reviewed approach. So let's just stop for a second and acknowledge that Chuck and Emmanuel and we share this connection to global research. And it seems to me global research, covers this in a wide array of issues from all sorts of perspectives. But it is underlying it all a sort of leftist approach, a progressive approach. And, Chosadowski is dealing with many issues that mostly so-called conservatives deal with. The unnamed, the thing that we're not supposed to say the word COVID, apparently, because this has somehow become some sort of slanderous term that gets you taken off platforms and things. But, it was largely libertarian right people that sort of started to figure it out. So I am, interested in what a time to address the things going on. I love to do that, but I'm going into a more of a historical view on all of this. So when I was talking to Chuck about green liberty, I basically took from that, 1 hour discussion on the phone that the project is to see how to bring together all kinds of people who are interested in social justice, who see the criminality, the huge level of criminality at the highest levels, this phenomena that many people are put above the law these days. And we see that in, Gaza, where there's all of this juridical action about genocide and such, and it's just ignored by the Israeli government as this is total madness, that these international laws just don't conform with how they see the world, although they came out of, Israel came out of the United Nations. So this need to look at the world in a critical sense, to get down to the essence of it, like private property, seemed to me to be a very big topic in Native American studies. I mean, the whole emphasis of these Indians, these Native people, they have this collectivist view. They share the land. They don't see, when you get a buffalo, you don't sell it by the pound, and there's a collective interest. And so the thrust of a civilizing process would be to teach Indian people the benefits of private property and to become, investors and civilized people who could be trusted to, pay their taxes and become freehold land, free tenured landholders. And so this caused me to think, this theme of the privatization of the Western Hemisphere, starting in 1492, this aspect of globalization. How would you describe the process of, bringing into private property the resources of the world, the lands of the world, the minerals of the world, the hydroelectric power of the world, the intellectual property of the world, breaking it down into stakes and futures and insurance and this, so I thought about this for a number of years. I thought about what about this writing about sort of the genesis of capitalism as in essence a project, a trajectory of breaking the world into breaking nature, breaking the creation into morsels of privatized ownership, and then reconstructing these morsels of ownership in different ways. And then the other side of that, well, what is the other side of that? The native way. And well, why should we give up, the idea that when you kill the buffalo, it's not just yours to sell by the pound. There's old people in your society, there's hungry people in the society, you share it out in different ways. This brought me to the concept of the public interest. And I thought for Chuck's sake and Green Liberty's sake, this idea of looking at the public interest, or as a sort of adjunct, the public service. This is something that we could focus on, and whether you're left, right, we're trying to get people out of their silos. That this is it seems like a maybe boring subject at first, but if you think about it more deeply, it's a very challenging idea. How would we get education that would bring people back to the idea that we need to regulate for food safety, we need to regulate for clean water, we need to do regulation in the public interest. And of course, all these regulatory bodies have been taken over by the companies they're supposed to regulate. In recent times, we have privatization, neoliberalism, contracting out government services. All this idea that privatization is the way to go. So these two volumes, the title for them is "The Bowl with One Spoon." And I was thinking about public service. I had particularly in mind the CBC, which used to be a wonderful organization Obviously not like the American television and radio that I saw. They have a bit of public broadcasting in the United States, but nothing like in Canada. And the BBC used to be quite charming. This idea of using the metaphor of the bowl with one spoon as a metaphor for like public service and public interest, this became enticing to me. And this symbol of shared hunting territory among Native people. So this, you know, I read about wampum belts and the way Indian people in their own treaties among themselves signified various concepts. One of the concepts was your group and my group, we're going to share this hunting territory. So we're going to put on the belt an image of a bowl with one spoon, which signifies, you know, using this one spoon to share the resources of this area, not with everybody, just with these two particular groups, and that would be enforced in some way. So that basically, I guess, is pretty much going to the extent of my time. I'm very fascinated by the need to do a investigation on 9/11. And as I say, I rewrote the second volume of my Bowl with One Spoon series. It's called Earth into Property. I rewrote it with the idea of giving the global war on terror kind of a history, you know, back into the Indian frontier and the Western expansion of the United States and this kind of thing. And of course, the frauds that happened with respect to the COV, SARS-1, SARS-2, the whole scandal with the jabs, with the injections, the sickness that was made to reign, the depopulation, the questions of how this was done, how, you know, who paid for it, what happened to the money system, how this is connected to a much larger objective having to do with, you know, banks and military and basically a war on humanity and a depopulation agenda. We need research into these kinds of things. What about the genocide of this depopulation scheme? There's Netanyahu. He emerges from, you know, takes off his white coat with Albert Bourla. They're doing research into COVID, and he goes out into the battlefield and takes on another kind of genocide.
So a closing remark.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, that's where I'm at. Yeah. I hope I didn't go on longer than the others.
Well,
I think we're not doing that great in keeping the time.
Well, we didn't set strict time. We set a 10-minute kind of ballpark.
Yeah.
But what
Darn it, I had to be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's observe.
Yeah, let's leave it there.
Okay, so the evocation and the invocation of Native American tradition, the notion of common shared spaces, is appropriate and to the point for what an egalitarian society is going to be looking like, and we can appeal to the Native traditions of common ownership and shared hunting and all of that. The 7 principles, 7-generation thinking is built into the Green Party kind of project, you know, and you're touching on that. So Anthony, thanks for the affirmation, for Green Liberty, for building Big Tent, for finding these themes that we can build our movement on. And I think appealing to Native American tradition, there's something there that we need to be exploring further. And I appreciate your input on that.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, thanks for being here. So let's go, Gloria, Green Renaissance. Let's get the spotlight on Gloria, and then David, be ready. You'll be, I think, wrapping us up here. And, you know, Gloria is my comrade from, you know, in this movement, in this resistance project. So Gloria, you know, please share reflections and insights. I think you're talking on global peace and what's possible and what we're up against. Go for it, Gloria.
Hi, I'm Gloria Guillot, and right now I'm in New York and in Florida. And my group is Green Renaissance Sovereign Rights Movement, and we kind of consider ourselves the sister group, and I guess we're considered the sister group to Green Liberation. And many of our members were part of Green Liberty. And I guess we were co-founded by many members of Green Liberty also. So, you know, we kind of consider them our brothers. And Green Liberty is more involved, I guess, in action. And Green Renaissance is, I guess, more involved in theory. So we are kind of the policy wonks or the think tank behind what goes on. So with that in mind, Chuck wanted me to talk about concepts of liberation and state crimes, and I'll kind of weave that in. I just want to say, we are right now, and this is extremely serious, and it really goes over people's heads, and it's kind of shocking to me. We're on the brink of nuclear war in two areas, in Eurasia and also in the Mideast. And, you know, at any moment, a nuclear war could break out because the United States has greenlit sending long-range missiles into Russia. And that is like, I think, the final red line that Russia will tolerate. And they have changed their nuclear policy now so that if a country that's non-nuclear, such as Ukraine, attacks them using US technology that is operated and uses US troops to target and fire these weapons into Russia, that Russia will now strike the United States. And what people in the United States seem to think is, oh, well, this is a theater war. It'll be Europe and it'll be Russia, and that's it. Putin has said very clearly that it won't be that. It will be World War III. They're coming right for the United States. So everybody, like, focus on that. It's important. Number two, right now, we are sitting in a situation where at any moment, Israel is going to do a strike against Iran with the backing of the United States. And, you know, while I really detest, the Democrats, you know, I also want to condemn Trump here too. Trump's latest statement is Israel should hit the nuclear first and worry about the rest later. He wants Israel to hit Iran's nuclear reactors, facilities, and then worry about the rest later. So we really are between two nuclear wars, okay? So everything that we have ever thought is important is no longer important. This is what's important. So let's go back a little bit. How did we get here? What happened? And why is it important? And we could go back to, you know, two concepts, liberation and state crimes. And what happens is if state crimes are hidden, then we never know history. And if we don't know history, we don't know what's coming next. So we're raised as children. We're conditioned as children through social engineering to believe that the experts tell us what's true and what our textbooks say is true. And we're told not to question authority. And what we need to do is liberate ourselves first and liberate our minds first and liberate our thinking, because we are going against lifetimes of programming, lifetimes of saying, don't question why. And I don't know if anyone here has raised children. I have. And children hit an age where they're constantly asking why. Everything is a why. And what many parents say at some point is, because I said so. And that's what kids are taught, even at home, because I said so. And the key to development is this asking why. And we need to resurrect that in ourselves. And we need to help others to question why and to question authority and to use their own judgment. And this is going against lifetimes of propaganda and a concept that I really want everyone to focus on called social engineering and conditioning. And this affects how we think about culture, how we think about politics, how we think about relationships, how we think about our own identities, and our concept of religion. And just even in the Catholic Church, which I had studied, I wrote an article on the Catholic Church, and there's two separate camps in the Catholic Church. There's the Opus Dei camp, and then there's a liberation theology camp, and they're fighting. And the Opus Dei camp is saying if people are wealthy, it's because of God's will, and if people are poor, it's because of God's will. And liberation theology is saying to hell with that. If you're poor, it's because you've been taken advantage of by evil and you've been oppressed. So, there's a real need to, even in a religion, there's this social engineering. So we have to always be very conscious, and we have to look at all situations using critical analysis, which is basically very simple. It's who won, who lost. And we need to look at things that way. It's kind of like follow the money. It's also who won and who lost and why. So if we do that, we've got a chance. The other thing that we're exposed to constantly is predictive programming. And I think a great example of that is the movie Contagion, where we saw this movie Contagion, and then all of a sudden we're learning these terms, social distancing and stop the spread and all this stuff. So when it actually happens, it's already part of our mind. And we have to understand that humans are think in terms of pattern recognition. So when we see things and we've heard them before and they're familiar, we're more likely to believe them. So we are being socially conditioned through repetition. We're being socially conditioned through predictive programming. So we really have to, kind of put a halt on this. And the other thing that, really kind of blew my mind when I started studying it was Tavistock and social engineering in London. And, I had a rock band and, I've always loved rock and roll, but, I started thinking about my own life and all the influences. And out of Tavistock, out of the CIA, out of social engineering came sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And the whole idea of this, I think, was really talked about a bit by John Spritzler, is to this idea of separating us from our family, separating us from our husbands, our wives, separating us from our children, separating us from intergenerational families, separating the nuclear family. This whole concept is if we're all separate, if we're all on our own, if we're all isolated, we are so much easier to be socially engineered. We are so much easier to oppress. So one of the things that's very important is that we don't allow that in our personal lives, that we stick together and we form communities and we fight for our communities and we fight for our relationships and we try to stay connected to our children. And, these things are very important on a personal level. The other thing I wanted to talk very much about, which Jeremy spoke about, and I think also Emmanuel spoke about, was this whole concept of false flags and black flags and how we are manipulated through these events. Now, tomorrow is also the anniversary of basically the attack from Gaza into Israel. And there's a whole lot of stuff that's going around that maybe there's going to be some terrorist activity in the United States or Europe connected to this. And it's very possible that there may be authentic terrorist activity. But a lot of us in this group know about the let it happens. And we here, I think, are all pretty much of the same belief that October 7th last year was a let it happen. that there's enough evidence that Israel knew it was happening and stood down. The same way they stood down for Pearl Harbor, the same way they either made it happen with 9/11 or stood down for it. But the whole idea that, terrorists learn to fly planes using flight sim, really doesn't go over very well here in our group. It just doesn't make sense. So, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of stuff like that. And then, when we go back to General Wesley Clark, he admitted in 2007 that shortly after 9/11 in 2001, he learned that they were going to go after 7 countries in 5 years. And the countries are, again, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and last but not least, Iran. So Iran has been in their sights, to our knowledge, at least since 2007, and in General Wesley Clark's sights since 2001, and most likely it's way before that. So these are things, and just for examples, our conditioning to be against Russia, because you try to talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, well, Putin is like the devil, Putin is a dictator, communists are trying to take over the country, and you really trace it back, and I can remember, I don't know how many here can remember or how many in our audience can remember, but there was Bullwinkle the Moose. This is a child cartoon, and in it you had a character who was always causing trouble and had bombs and all kinds of stuff, named Boris Badenough, and his colleague, was Natasha. It was clearly they were Russian. So, from cartoons, we're programmed against Russia. From children, we're programmed against all kinds of things. And it's this repetition and this familiarity that gets into people's heads, and they just need to really stand back and think about their childhood, think about their teenage years, and to really reconsider what is going on. Another thing that we hear very much from, especially the Republicans and the right, is how bad the communists are and how bad the socialists are, and they have no clue what they're saying. And then there's this concept that the United States is somehow capitalist and there's freedom, which couldn't be further from the truth. We do not have capitalism in the United States. This is, first of all, an oligarchy. We don't have a democracy. Okay, so let's throw that lie right out. And then the second lie is, we have capitalism maybe for working class and poor because they get nothing. And then we have socialism for the wealthy and for corporations. I mean, we bail out the banks, we bail out the stock market, we bail out everyone that doesn't need bailing out. We bail out executives. I mean, they can tank the economy and still walk away with bonuses, as we saw with all of the issues with the financial markets. So, I mean, we don't have capitalism. We have socialism. It's socialist only for the wealthy. So, I mean, so many things are just lies. And then, if anyone has studied actually economics, capitalism is predicated on conquering new markets, because you have to exploit labor and you have to exploit resources so that you can make a profit. Whereas that isn't the model for communism, and it's not the model for socialism. So, it's completely flipped. And you see that constantly, that, people just really don't understand what it is they're saying. And, the more you just keep representing that someone is a dictator or authoritarian, I mean, literally everything that comes out when you hear Putin from the Western media is that dictator, authoritarian, dictator, authoritarian. And if you hear it enough, you're like, oh yeah, he's the dictator, authoritarian, which couldn't be further from the truth. He's extremely well reasoned, and he has to go to the Duma for everything. It's very different from the United States. And in the United States, we had a coup, and nobody's even talking about it. One day we had President Biden, next day, who knows? you know, where he is or what he's saying. And, you know, very often he says one thing and then Blinken says another, and Blinken's always right. So who knows? You know, it's really a ridiculous situation. So what else do we have here? The other thing is, you know, I have this quote from Kissinger that I love, okay? And it may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal. And I just want to say all this bullshit, excuse my French, on television, on the radio, on, you know, newscasters and in papers and even, you know, on Facebook and Twitter, you know, oh, we have to save Ukraine. We have just killed a whole generation of men in Ukraine. We've just wiped them out, completely wiped out. These are fathers. These are potential husbands. These are husbands. These are sons. Gone, gone, gone. I mean, we're not helping Ukraine. We're helping BlackRock and we're helping Cargill because they just got all of basically Ukraine's land. And BlackRock has the reconstruction deal. So we just killed all their people. You know, Zelensky is not a patriot for Ukraine. He's a traitor. He is a traitor to Ukraine. The same way that Biden is a traitor to the United States. And Kamala Harris is a traitor to the United States. And all of them are traitors to the United States. Because if you are putting the ruling elite first, you cannot have two masters. You cannot also serve the American people. So you have to make a choice. Are you serving the elite or are you serving the American people? And they choose the elite. And the elite is not just the American elite. It is the world unit elite, the elite in Europe, the elite in Asia. There's an elite that is not us. The elite in Israel, it's the same thing. It's not us. They're not us. So they're not serving us. They're traitors to us and they're traitors to our nation. And that's, you know, really important. And what else did I want to say? Okay, the other thing I wanted to say is, you know, and I want to send this to everyone out there who is in the CIA or who is in the government and who thinks that because they're a servant of the CIA or they're a servant of the US government, that they're somehow safe. Saddam Hussein was an asset, dead. Noriega was an asset of the CIA, dead. William Casey, okay, was the head of the CIA. He was going to testify on Iran-Contra. The day before, he suffered 2 seizures. And then he was not able to testify at the Senate panel about the role of the CIA in arms sales to Iran. And just for the record, just so everyone gets this, the United States was selling weapons to Iran and Iraq during the Iran-Iraq war. And they were selling it to Iran through Israel. So while Israel was selling weapons to Iran, Iran was threatening to blow up Israel, but Israel was still selling them weapons. So a lot of what we believe is true might not be true either. So, you know, I'm just putting that out there, that sometimes things are very strange out there, because that was like a real wake up to me, because I remember the Ayatollah Khomeini saying he's going to blow up Israel. And when I found out Israel was selling them US weapons many years later, I was like, wow, that's a real shocker. So, you know, take a look at that. But, you know, so just no one should feel really comfortable about what they're doing if they are a traitor and if they are doing the bidding of the elite, because the elite are not your friends. You're being used. You're a puppet. And I just want to urge everyone to really check out a few shows and a few things that really help. And you know, I just urge everyone to read the writings of our panelists, certainly Emmanuel, Jeremy, John. We have some really great writers here. I also do some writing. I write under my name and I also write under a pseudonym. And I suggest that everyone just keeps, you know, checking out the Convo Couch, Pasta to Go, Left on Left, I also really enjoy Colonel Douglas McGregor, really good, and Scott Ritter and Judge Napolitano and RT as good sources. And thank you, Chuck, for giving me some air here. And
Well, you covered a lot of territory,
I
and
tried to get it in.
and I think the key thing here that is the common theme is the wickedness of the military industrial complex and the all the deep state elements that drive that. That really is where there's a left-right agreement that we are lied to about all that. They did do JFK, they did 9/11, they've done COVID, and now they continue to advance techno-totalitarianism. And I think that's where we can build our movement. I'm hearing remarks from many people, we're being lied to, and we need accountability. These are key themes of the Green Liberty sensibility. So, Gloria, thanks a lot for sharing. Let's go to Davi. And I really, let's get the spotlight on Davi, please. Do that for me, Tom, if you're there. Otherwise, yeah, Tom will do it. Davi will end the speakers. And then after Davi, I mean, it's appropriate in a way because he's uplifting and inspirational and ambitious for a revolutionary, immediate kind of spontaneous possible change. So Davi is going to speak to his vision, possibilities, solidarity, and then I want to go to Adam in Australia and have him say hi and give us some and let's just talk with Adam, and then we can go beyond our 2 hour. We're not hard set on anything. All right, Davi, please. I'm going to take the stoplight off of myself, and here we go.
Get everyone together in America together, going stronger for the better, living in America together. Greetings to my fellow humans of our great nation and further abroad. I've just shared with you America Together, a new national anthem that I'm submitting to the American public in addition to my presidential candidacy. I am Davi, artist, tech founder, 2021 candidate for mayor of New York City, and arbiter of Earth. In New York City 2020, I vow to ensure the sacred protection, harmony, and natural evolution of humanity and Earth. I'm running to earn your vote in 2024 as President of America and leader of the free world. My website is bydavi.com. I am an independent presidential candidate. Last month, I received third place out of the candidates who ran for the Green Party's 2024 presidential nomination, a monumental achievement considering I am the youngest presidential candidate, and our campaign has had no external financial backing, a first-time, self-funded, grassroots, volunteer-based campaign. This campaign is from our hearts to the hearts of America, so that maybe we can get to a new heartbeat. I have partnered with my campaign manager, Nissan Pitcher, and my vice presidential candidate, Susanna Tanner, fellow true advocates for a brighter nation, joining us in the audience today. My areas of focus include rehabilitation and recycling, providing healing-oriented support for those ailing in body, mind, and/or behavior, finding harmony and balance between usage and contribution to Earth. The American Refresh, a 4-year transition where through paced collective voting, Americans vote for the exact government we want moving forward, intentionally managing the growth of technology. The mediator wing of the police, an emergency mediator wing of the police that on demand mediates tough situations and conversations without guns, batons, or slow court dates. The red and blue, election after election, have proven to the American voter their commitment to war and disaster, and their missing commitment to the core principles of humanity and the preservation of Earth. But that's just a choice. We can make another. I'm here to present another way, another choice of vision called Earth Order. I'm going to explain the core points, and if you believe this will be better for the humans of America, agree by saying indeed when I point to you. And I know some of you aren't with us in the space, but I can hear you either way. So Earth Order is a new choice that offers direct democracy, an online voting system that allows us to ongoingly vote for the exact government that we want moving forward.
Indeed.
A new choice that provides equal salaries for chosen work.
Indeed.
A new choice where all have access to quality housing through a housing exchange.
Indeed.
A new choice that covers all healthcare costs.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Now, I ask you, how do you feel? Do you feel important hearing your own voice in this presidential conversation? I am interested in your voice. Isn't that how government is supposed to feel? Just sharing a thought. I heard at least 4 indeeds. I think that means you should support what you have agreed is better for the humans of America, the things you want for our American society, regardless of which candidate is presenting it. Now, one of the greatest things that I've noticed in this presidential election period, we've been running for about 1.5 years, is that people value marketing over quality. Now, quality is going to get you a nation of democracy and equality because you've assessed which presidential candidates are offering that plan. If they're not offering it, they should be not filling the space of your conversation, because everything that receives focus allows growth. If you are not providing the space for the democracy and equality and the people presenting it that you want in your life, then you will not reap the benefits of it. The self-esteem of our nation is low. We become pessimistic. As you've heard already in this conversation, we're not nice to each other. We can be angry. The police and military recruitment is low because people generally don't believe in the structure of our government. Our nation is becoming uninspired because we don't have a foundation of a government we can trust. Talking to so many people this year, and as an empath, I have felt the weight of our nation. The Davi campaign creates a direct relationship with the American government, the relationship so that we can have a stance on foreign policy that is reflective of the American will. This campaign reflects the average American's opinion that has never supported war in all cases, in all foreign wars, current and past. We pay billions for the most elite, technologically savvy military in the world, yet still don't have secure land or air borders. This is not a reflection of the equipment not being available, but rather a reflection of the military's intention and attention being too scattered around the world. We need to improve the relationship we have with our own government, which starts with our election system updating. Because of our experience on the campaign trail this year, blocked from the primary ballots in states with the most delegates fighting for the equal treatment as a presidential candidate, we've learned the details of how the election system is failing the American people. And I was inspired earlier this year to write something called the Declaration of American Human Governance, presented by Human First America. This states that the American government must respect Americans as humans first before any other rules, corporations, or so-called artificial intelligence, to declare American human governance over our American government, taking action to ensure the accurate reflection of the people's will in government. If all men are created equal, shouldn't we all have the same ballot to choose our nation's leader? But it's not like that. Instead, we have different parties in different states, different reasons to allow someone to register to vote or for their vote to count. Even the former president who previously won an election is still complaining about the election system. If you are an American, if you have a social security number or a naturalized citizen and a state ID, you should be able to vote. That vote should speak directly into the government, not a suggestion to some electoral college nobody knows. Maybe we didn't notice it before, but each state's voter registration is infringing upon the equal rights promised to all Americans in the Constitution. It's time for an improvement to the voting system. Nothing in opposition to the current, just another way for each American to state their opinion. What you deserve as an American: equality, a fair vote as a human of America. Chapter 1 of our campaign was seeking a political party's affirmation, and that is now concluded. Now we understand these parties are not for the people, They are for themselves. Chapters 2 starts here and now with you. Will you allow us to come together and achieve the equality and democracy we deserve as Americans? Please visit bit.ly.com/DAHG, where Human First America stands for a national election process to choose the president that is with the people. Now, what I would like to talk about in this particular, that's the overview of my campaign. But I would like to talk about in this particular presentation by Green Liberty. Thank you, Chuck, and Emmanuel, and everyone else who's put in energy to make sure that this is something that we are not only nationally but internationally echoing. That we are actually having a conversation that reflects what we want for our world. So if you believe in democracy, you must follow through. I thought I'd share a bit of a report back as a presidential candidate, which I think is important for the people to hear. I've been honored to speak to so many people with so many perspectives and life experiences, all willing to donate some amount of time to hearing about a real chance for democracy and equality, regardless of where it's coming from, regardless of who or where. We've never heard that before. This is the first time a plan for real equality and democracy is being presented by a presidential candidate. And I've been, honored to find out that that is actually true for the history of America. So we've experienced a lot of double talk in this year and a half of campaigning in the Green Party primary in Oregon, in Pennsylvania, and Kansas. I was part of the presidential debates, but mysteriously disappeared from the ballot. The Green Party is supposed to be the party upholding democracy, but in terms of the presidential nomination, first place blocked me and other candidates from being on the ballots in states with the most delegates. Second place spent the year lying about being on 48 state ballots. So if you remove liars and cheaters, which candidate really won a Green Party nomination? I had the same person who said that I was a libertary spirit of the election say that he didn't think of me when thinking about liberation. Liberation is for all. I am either part of the all you want for liberation, or you are just another authoritarian who believes in a specific group's liberation. If you believe in democracy, follow through. Who do you believe liberation is for? Whose voice is important to define liberation? Because if you are curating who liberation is for, you are also authoritarian in your own construction. Honesty and sincerity internally is what must be practiced for honest and sincere living experiences externally. Though we'd like to hope that that isn't the case, it is the truth. A good analysis and a detailed complaint is only useful only after and or finding a new authority or judge in which to expect democracy from. We must acknowledge that where we have expected democracy from has repeatedly failed. And this innate of itself is the great endeavor. A system that composes and maintains democracy is the great endeavor. We who believe in democracy, who are naturally compelled to work for it. Why are we at a convention about democracy and not about plumbing? Because we represent whose attention is somewhere else. Just as we trust the plumbers to keep our sewage system flowing, we who fight for democracy must do so optimally. But instead, many allow marketing to dominate over quality. We find that many of those who represent corporate interests and not the human interests feel our conversations. We trust the plumbers to come up with solutions, yet they cannot trust us. We cannot choose who is part of this family for democracy, but we sure do have to figure out how we can best use each other's perspectives and energies in the most optimal way for the solution. Operating in honesty and in sincerity is the only way we've got to get forward. Democracy does not choose who democracy is democratic to. Democracy only includes all who are there. Liberation is greater than your opinion, your perspective of what liberation looks like, because liberation is freeing of all and not just you. All may not look, sound, or talk the way you prefer, but all is the key to your liberation. Have you made space for the liberation of all. If you believe in democracy, follow through. It is time to upgrade our expectations of ourselves. What does unity look like? It looks like the unity of those who care about real humanity, placing the actions in a timeline and unquestionably completing the task, moving in a united concert of many ideas that indisputably increase the quality of life for all humans in America. The first and most urgent, indisputable act of democracy in 2024's election period, signing the Declaration of American Human Governance, and continuing with some of the great ideas presented today. With some strategy, putting together like puzzle pieces, we come together and we contribute the best to all, unmoved by our oppressors' news. If we are to learn anything from those oppressors, they are unmoved by our news, what we find important, and thus are successful in achieving their own news. If you believe in democracy, follow through. ByDavi.com. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Chuck, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Davi. And Green Liberties in solidarity with, Davi has this interesting call for a fourth leg of government, direct digital democracy, very modern. We've had debates around, is the energy to be developed in the local or is it in a national? And Davi is definitely national, and he's a whole, I feel the, very national. I mean, you're in the state, you want all the people to be able to contribute to the policy development through a digital voting program. And it's
Absolutely.
intriguing. And I know that there's, in the Green Party, there are a lot of wonky people that are into the electoral things and would be very interested in that. So welcome, and for being in Coalition for Liberation. Adam is in, if Adam, could we get spotlight on Adam, if you're there from Australia, and then, we're going to just do a
Workers League.
Workers League, and you hooked up with Emmanuel in the course of Emmanuel's campaign. And so we want to put the spotlight on you and welcome you and this, program to develop Liberation Coalition and tactical things we can be doing and getting on building a big tent for change. So Adam, if you will, I'm going to take the spotlight off of me. We're at the top of our 2 hours. We're going to go longer. We're still going to keep the recording on. And so people can peel off as you see fit, but we're going to go longer and have some Q&A. And I do want to loop back to my notion of electoral politics and bully pulpit and, reclaiming the Green Party and all the while demanding an egalitarian society and how we build our story around that is of my great interest. Adam, please welcome and just introduce yourself and we're happy to have you.
Great, thank you very much, Chuck. Thank you very much for the invitation. Greatly appreciated. My name's Adam Baker. I'm part of the Workers League. We are willingly endorsing Emmanuel Pastrijk's campaign for US president, and we do so on three main bases. One being the COVID operation, that the terrible time of the COVID lockdowns and vaccine mandates and the PSYOP, if you like, should never happen again, and should be totally opposed. Secondly, on the anti-war issue, which is crucial, and it's important to, as Emmanuel does, to oppose all wars that are waging and raging around the world. And I agree, World War III is arguably here already, and we're on the brink of nuclear war. but it's very important to oppose all the wars, not just one or two of them, which is what many of the movements focus on. So that's a very important plank. And thirdly, we must stand opposed to total corporate monopoly and corporate domination of society. These corporations are so large and so powerful that they are taking over and blocking our participation in society in a certain sense. So those are the three planks that we are supporting and endorsing Emmanuel's campaign for president. Also on climate change or the collapse of the biosphere, the devastating environmental crisis that is afflicting the world. I mean, I know that in recent times, many or some believe that climate change is a hoax and fake and it's not happening and this sort of stuff. But I think the environmental crisis has to be acknowledged and has to be confronted as a big part of that. That said, the Workers' League is a socialist and Marxist and Trotskyist organization. We were perhaps unique in what we call the freedom movement, in that the COVID left, what we call the COVID left or the mainstream left, certainly collapsed on COVID and joined with the state, joined with capitalism and imperialism to impose the COVID repression, to impose vaccine mandates, to impose lockdowns and so on and so forth. There was a small part of the left, which was the anti-COVID left, which because of the capitulation of almost the entire left, was there, but it was very small. So we were a part of that, and flowing from that, we do think that there is a political basis for a left-right coalition, or a socialist libertarian coalition, or I'm not wanting to put labels on anyone here, certainly, but at a certain point along the way, we may have to go our own separate ways, but certainly for now, we can see that there is a basis for a left-right coalition on a whole heap of issues, whether it's freedom and anti-COVID, or whether it's anti-war, whether it's corporate control. There are a whole swathe of issues that we can and that we need to work together on if we are to move forward at all. I understand very much that many would identify the left as what we would term perhaps the identity politics left, or the woke left. I can assure you that we are against that. We are certainly not a part of that. But I understand that people confuse much of the left with that agenda, and that unfortunately breaks into aspects of the anti-war movement, or supposedly an anti-war movement, I would argue, and here we generally agree with John Spritzler's writings and commentary on the Israel-Palestine situation, where a false paradigm of being pro-Israel or anti-Israel or pro-Palestine or anti-Palestine has set up a situation of complete division, where and arguably has blocked a real anti-war movement from beginning. So we need to find ways around that. I would propose. But anyway, I mean, I could speak for some time on the issues, but in view of time, I might leave it there and post our website in the chat. Our website is redfireonline.com, and more than happy to talk and communicate and work with anybody on these issues and many more. So thanks very much for the invitation.
Well, Adam, thank you for being here and your solidarity and your support of Emmanuel and his program, his campaign.
Chuck, I'm thinking, Workers League
Yes.
has Kate in the United States, and maybe Kate could make a comment if that's okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Let's get Kate on. That'd be beautiful. I can get Kate Fry. I think I can get the spotlight. Is that Kate sitting down?
It is. It is. I am here with my little dog. I live in Maine, New England state. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, great speeches. Yeah, I think we need to build a movement that's rooted in the working class. We need to find a way ahead. We're on the brink, as Adam and other people said, we're on the brink of a third world war. Literally, it's a very scary situation. With the Russia conflict, Ukraine proxy war conflict, we see it as a proxy war. A couple of weeks ago, Blinken and the British Foreign Secretary were very close to selling, literally allowing Ukraine to use long-range ballistic missiles, which would have been. Ukraine doesn't have the ability to launch these, so it would have been from NATO itself. And Putin said he considered an act of war. That was a yes. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me?
We still hear you. Yeah, that got garbled. There's some garbling going on.
Yeah, I'm on my phone right now. I'm calling from my phone. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm just gonna say we're in the brink of a third world war situation. It is very, very scary time in history right now in so many areas. And we need to build. I feel we need to build a movement rooted in class struggle, if in the American working class, which is under attack in so many areas. And I agree the current what's on offer mainstream politics in the U.S. is just insane. It's just puerile, such a primitive level. So we need to build, I think, a class struggle politics against the COVID tyranny, the lockdown tyranny, against so many other things. And that's about it. And I would agree that the electoral system in the U.S. is bankrupt. Its electoralism, I think, is dead. Electoral integrity in the U.S. is a very low level. There's no chain of custody is not observed. U.S. is telling other countries like Venezuela, other countries, but our electoral system is extremely bad, really, and we shouldn't be telling other people how to run their elections. Electoralism is a dead end right now. It's a total dead end. It can be useful for building a movement, but the system itself is not legitimate. It's a completely unlegitimate system. I don't completely know the way ahead, but it lies in building an alternative rooted in class struggle.
All right. Thank you. Uh-oh.
Maybe everyone should put on mute to make for the moment.
Thank you, Kate. And this is a point of, I think Green Liberty is in solidarity with working class struggle. And certainly the working class should, to make a value judgment, object to the evil of the plutocratic deep state has stolen history, starting with the JFK assassination and all the others in the 60s. Imagine if they had not been killed and they had been allowed to live their full lives, that they had been allowed to heed the warning from Eisenhower and form policy and craft what society becomes. I think we would be living in a different era than the World War III that we are actually experiencing. We have a demand to make, and that's what we have to work out here. The working class cannot be the only warriors struggling on the front lines for the changes we need. This will be all people, all ordinary people retired, students, young, even capitalists, petty bourgeoisie. This needs to be a mass movement. And in that mass movement, I think the egalitarian language appeals to me because it speaks to a real, I think, core American value for kind of fairness, and how this gets crafted, how this gets explained is our task today, to make this struggle. And we're going to work on multiple levels. Now, Kate just said electoral politics is a waste of time, and I can't dispute that. Although I say it, I recognize electoral politics, especially in minor parties or even independents, as a political theater to get our ideas out, to use it as bully pulpit. And I think to organize, I think Kate agrees that there is some value for that. And I think John Spritzler would advise that we always keep the big picture in mind, and we put the big picture first. And the big picture first is that the plutocrats, that enough is enough of the plutocratic power structure. And things have gotten so sideways, so horrible, so ruined, that they have no standing to claim authority around. So this is us refusing to consent to be governed by thieves.
Right.
However we want to frame this. So raise your hands if you'd like to make some remarks. We're going to let's do a quick go around and reflection, but let's go to Emmanuel, if you would. Emmanuel, make a remark, Emmanuel, about what we're here talking about possibilities for liberation, the imperative for it. Everyone has their unique perspectives, but we're trying to build, I think, big tent. I think that's where we are in agreement. This will be a place where socialists, but even free market people need to come together and find unity. And I think there's some key points that we can establish, and maybe we talk about that. But again, I have this notion that in 2026, there would be 5 US senators, 25 or 30 US Congress, political truthers expressing green liberty sensibility and advancing an egalitarian revolution and using the electoral race as bully pulpit. You need millions to do it well. It is a cloud9 thinking. Emmanuel, go ahead and make some remarks, and then if people want to have some insights, please raise your hand and we'll call on you.
Well, thank you, Chuck. I'll keep it very relatively short. I want to just thank everybody for participating. I think we had a tremendous group of speakers and also participants who haven't spoken yet, and that has tremendous historical significance. I wanted to, and I think Gloria nailed the nail on the head here. But we're on the edge of nuclear war. This is not a minor event, and we should speak with confidence to say this conference, Green Liberty here, is more significant than those bankrupt pageants and orgies of the Democratic and Republican parties, or for that matter, the degraded Libertarian and Green Party, and that we have this state in which these institutions have been reduced to mush, right? The federal government, local government, universities, media, newspapers, NGOs, other institutions are so degraded that if we can take a stand that has integrity, that's based on scientific and also ethical truth, that we can be transformative in our act. So I really do appreciate everyone participating, speaking with confidence, and that this will be the core, the vanguard for a profound change, and that the coming together of libertarian, traditional, conservative thinking, not in the sense of a bankrupt market economy, Wall Street, quote unquote conservative, but in terms of values, in terms of people, in terms of ethics, in terms of society, and also bringing together the true left and its true criticism of a bankrupt capitalist system, as opposed to the identity politics, think left, live right, Starbucks left, which we've been force fed over the last 30 years. This is also very inspiring. Thank you.
Well, so Anthony, Tony, do you go by Tony or Anthony?
Either one, but Tony's good.
Tony, your hand's up. We recognize you.
Yeah.
Please share your thoughts.
Yes, Gloria's presentation struck me quite a bit. The idea that, there's never really been a time like this in human history, that we are more imperiled at this moment as, a global civilization than it has ever been the case. And so every other issue kind of becomes secondary to, the future of humanity or all life on Earth. I have had the experience of going to Iran a few times. And, part of what I see going on here is, well, this started as a national convention, but now you have some Five Eyes people, somebody from Canada, somebody from Australia, and maybe that needs to be somehow figured into it. In Canada, of course, I've, experienced US politics intimately and felt a part of it all my life in Toronto growing up. So it was quite a different perspective on things to find myself in Iran, meeting the government people. It was as the agreement on nuclear energy was developing, and there was sort of a rapprochement going on. And so there was, let's bring in some dissidents from North America and Europe into Iran, and we can meet together and talk with Iranian people. And this was, part of a larger process. And, there you really do get the feeling of Zionist Israel and Iran as sort of being at the center of the tension. It was already very clear in 2014 to me. Then, I was invited back a few times, go on Press TV, and I start to change my orientation. And then I start to hear about this thing called the axis of resistance. And it really came clear, much more clear in 2019, when the Iranian conference was actually organized in Beirut. And so Iran organized it, but we met in Beirut. And then we went to the south and met, this group called Hezbollah. And it was, quite a thing to see them, meet them, see them. I was thinking, are we going to be in a cave doing, secret handshakes, or what is it going to be like? But then you get there and you find out, who is Hezbollah? Well, it's the kids, it's the mailman, it's, all the people. It's a much bigger thing than a military. There is this military organization, but it's a whole cultural thing, and it is the base of, the ability of Lebanon to continue this long next door to Israel. And they've made several tries to take over Lebanon and asserted themselves. And Hezbollah has been, this sort of phenomena. And so I do find myself feeling this axis of resistance. I feel there is a tremendous caution and moderation within Iran. Like, imagine they missile Tel Aviv. And I'm waiting to talk, I'm going to talk about it on Press TV the other night. And what's going on? Like, they're missiling Tel Aviv, but all I see is the explosions in open fields away from Tel Aviv. I didn't understand at the moment that those were airports and such. But even after, the just pure slaughter in Beirut and seeing, just blow up whole apartment blocks. And, I'm sort of waiting to see some kind of response to that. And what do we see is this, very cautious approach, almost too cautious, it seemed to me. So I'm finding myself, when I hear about the axis of resistance, I'm attracted to that. I know the people there. When I was in Beirut, I met Dugan. He was there. Pepe Escobar was there. There was a group of Houthis, and they were really good guys. They were really interesting, wonderful people, and we were all meeting together in Beirut, and so I don't feel like to want to join in, some kind of let's save the USA, let's rebuild the USA. I want to, work with people, and I want to, be outside of an isolated milieu. And this group seems to me, and Emmanuel's campaign seems to me something I feel I can, in good conscience, be part of. But I'm just proposing that we're living in a world that is fast changing. And think about it, they are actually doing resistance. They're not doing offense. They are definitely doing defense. And why shouldn't we be proselytizing a little bit for, okay, they're a theocracy, we're a theocracy, we've got this chosenite thing. And of course, being chosenite means the laws don't apply to you, and you can murder whoever you want. And a lot of people seem really willing to go along with that because, well, Christian Zionism and all of this stuff, like, we're a theocracy, like the worst elements of a theocracy are showing ourselves.
You mean,
whereas
so,
in Iran,
hey, Tony,
it's the way around. Yeah.
So
Okay.
thank you. That was, and I one of the
I'm
things.
the only one you stop,
I know I interrupted you, but
I'm the only one you intervene.
Well, I mean, we could, the idea that we're a theocracy, I mean, we in another meeting, someone said, don't say we, say the power structure. I mean, I'm teasing you a little bit. But I mean, do you have a final kind of wrap up relative to Gloria's? You're riffing off of her call for peace, her criticism, and I think we do want to articulate, what does an egalitarian society look like? And I appreciate, that it would, what's it going to inform? How does Israel and the Palestinian live in peace? How does that get, resolved? And these are things that our movement needs to contribute to and speak, strongly to. And it means there needs to be a plutocratic stand down. The military industrial complex that is dominant needs to stand down or being taken down, however that's accomplished. But that's part of what I think we want to just speak, kind of normalize talking about this immense, huge, terrible problem.
Well, and I can say to you, who is we, but who has been backing up the Palestinians? It's been
the Americans. I mean, we don't need to rehash all that. The Americans.
Well, we're not rehashing it. We haven't talked about it at all. Like, how often do you hear any conversation on what's really going on within Iran and the politics of Iran?
Okay, I mean,
Mohammed Marandi. But anyway, thank you. And I went on too long again. I'm sorry.
Well, I appreciate it. So others who want, maybe Gloria wants to remark. Yes, Gloria.
I just want to add 2 points of information that, I agree with what was just said. One thing is, I notice all of this disinformation coming out of Israel, especially as to, the impact of these missiles. I've seen a lot of footage of things blowing up in Israel. I've read that they've hit military bases, they've hit airports, they've hit Mossad, and yet Israel is claiming nothing happened. They knocked out all these things. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we're being fed this incredible disinformation, and for the most part, the American public is buying it, and the reason they're using this information is because they want to pretend that the Iron Dome works and that Israel is just fine, when the reality is it's not the case. And so that's one thing, and it kind of prolongs the concept of the war. And what I was saying about Ukraine, that basically, we have destroyed Ukraine. We've murdered their whole population. We are going to destroy Israel. Okay, and when I say we, it's not me or us, it's again the United States government, but as a US citizen who is paying taxes for this, it's galling. So, I mean, if I say we, I mean, it's my dollars that is paying to, destroy Israel. So we're not fans of Israel. Our government is destroying Israel by putting Israel in the crosshairs, by encouraging them to go after Iran. I mean, the other thing I just wanted to point out as a point of information, and this was also said, and I agree with you, is that Iran and Russia, when they engage, they're not engaging with the civilian populations and infrastructure. When they hit infrastructure, it's really like kind of a last resort. What they're really aiming for is command and control centers and military installations. And they are really not that they have gloves on, but they're kind of following the rules of engagement that have been going on for centuries. You're not supposed to blow up civilian populations. And what's going on with the United States and Israel is completely off the hook. I mean, we are witnessing a genocide. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And what's going on in Lebanon is beyond the pale. I mean, they're bombing cities, they're bombing apartment buildings, and Ukraine has been doing this in the Donbass region since 2014. I mean, these civilian targets, and they're using weapons. They're using white phosphorus, which is illegal. It's hideous. So I mean, really, the United States and Israel are war criminals. These are war crimes. These aren't even just, military operations and war. These are criminal acts. But the American public is not told this, and the American public just believes, these ridiculous things that make absolutely no sense. That if anyone questions them, they hold no water. They're like sieves. You can see all the lies right through them, but we are trained since childhood not to use our deductive reasoning. We are taught not to use critical reasoning. We are taught to believe what we're shown, even if it disagrees with any sense of logic. So we have to awaken everyone. Use your resources. Debate. Talk. It's very important. So, I'm very thankful to Chuck and to Emmanuel and to everyone who has joined us here tonight to really engage and to really discuss, because this doesn't happen anywhere else. This happens here. And that is really remarkable in and of itself. So
it happens in other places.
Thank you, Judy. Only where you go, Judy.
So let me just say
Thank
to
you.
Gloria, thank you. On that note, I'm going to end the recording and we're going to stick around and chat. I'm just going to turn off the button because, and I want to just say to anyone watching to the end of this, if they're catching up, this was a Green Liberty convention. We didn't actually conduct any formal business. We didn't make any hard decisions, but we are a meeting of minds and building fraternity and sorority, or whatever it would be, camaraderie around struggle and facing this very, very difficult epic time we're in. And we're doing that in our conversations together and building projects together. So stay tuned to Green Liberty and the Green Renaissance movement. This is Chuck and I'm out. I'm going to end this recording.